Sheev Palpatine was born in the year 82 BBY on the planet Naboo to the aristocratic House Palpatine. He had a strong aptitude for the Force, however, his talents went untouched until Hugo Damask, aka Darth Plagueis, visited Naboo in 65 BBY and chose the young boy to be his apprentice. However, what would have happened if Palpatine was found by the Jedi? Early after birth, Palpatine began showing signs of being Force sensitive, and his parents noticed early on. Before his second birthday, he began using telekinesis to make toys and food float alike. His parents were astounded, but they knew they had to do the right thing. They contacted the Jedi Order about their son. Master Plo Koon came and introduced himself to the Palpatine family. They showed him the young Sheev, and Plo sensed his strong connection to the Force almost instantly. He thanked the Palpatines for contacting the Order and took Sheev back with him to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Palpatine's training began a few years later as a youngling, alongside Qui-Gon Jinn and Kai Narek, of similar age. These three shared a close relationship and were considered amongst the most talented younglings of their generation. They spent countless hours together in the Temple's training rooms, honing their skills in the Force. Palpatine's strength in the Force was a wonder to most Jedi, even the Masters. After a few years training, his connection with the Force skyrocketed exponentially. The day would come when it was time to be chosen as an apprentice by a Jedi Knight or Master. One Master specifically took a liking to Palpatine due to his similar background. Dooku was also born to a noble family on Sereno, as Palpatine was on Naboo. Master Dooku chose Palpatine to become his apprentice and began training him in the ways of the Force. Palpatine's close friend, Qui-Gon, was chosen by Sifo Dyas. Dyas and Dooku are close friends, so Qui-Gon and Palpatine remained in fairly close contact. Palpatine quickly learned that Dooku was a strict but fair teacher, demanding the best from Palpatine but also offering guidance and support when needed. He taught him the basics of lightsaber combat, the importance of mindfulness in the Force, and how to use his powers for the greater good. What is unique about Dooku's teachings is that he imparts wisdom about the wider galaxy and the political landscape, explaining how the Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic fit into the wider picture. 2 years into his training, Palpatine is sleeping in a hut on Concordia when he's suddenly jolted awake by a huge rush of dark-side energy. He sees flashes of rocks falling, a Bith's neck breaking, and a moon traveling at tremendous speeds. He is brought back into the real world, sweat trickling down his entire body, and is breathing heavily. What did his visions mean? Dooku is comforting him and asks the boy what happened. Palpatine explains the dream, how he felt the pain, suffering, and death take over him, his first experience of the dark side. Dooku has been wary of a rising darkness for a while now. It was normal for Padawans to be tempted with the darkness, but he'd never heard of visions. He couldn't help but think something else was behind all this. He calms Palpatine down and they head back to sleep, but Dooku will not forget this. Palpatine is of course sensing the death of Darth Tenebrous at the hands of Darth Plagueis. This moment is the beginning of the culmination of the 1,000-year grand plan of the Sith. Plagueis is the sole surviving Sith Master and begins searching for a new apprentice. However, he struggles to find anyone powerful and worthy enough of the seat at his side. He decides he needs guidance and travels to the Sith homeworld of Korriban. It is here he discovers a tribe of surviving Sith species, the last of their kind, living off what little vegetation and wildlife is left. The tribe is small, less than 30, but one member stands out. A strong and muscular Sith male, Zarek, who is their lead hunter. Plagueis talks with him and senses the Force is strong with him. However, the Sith is more brawn than brain. He isn't the leader of the tribe, but the strongest warrior. Plagueis thinks that maybe what he needs now isn't brains, but strength as he has himself. He offers the Sith everything, to leave his pitiful life on Korriban and join him in the conquest for galactic power. To prove himself, he has to murder his entire village in cold blood. He does not disappoint, and Plagueis can sense his ambition whilst he carries out this task. Darth Plagueis continues with his experiments in the Force to attempt to achieve the power over life and death. Years go by, and Palpatine has completed his training as a Padawan and finishes the trials to become a Jedi Knight, as well as Qui-Gon Jinn. They continue to learn and train in the ways of the Force for 10 years. Palpatine, Dooku, Qui-Gon and Sifo Dyas remain close, often training and sent on missions together as they work well as a team. However, they can sense the darkness is growing, ever so slowly. Dooku, Diaz, Qui-Gon and Palpatine all feel it and raise their suspicions with the Jedi Council, but their concerns are rejected. But Dooku and Palpatine know what he sensed years ago, a shift in the Force. In the meantime, Hugo Damask, aka Darth Plagueis, is expanding his influence throughout the galaxy and represents the international banking clan in the Senate. At this point in time, he's met the cloners on Kamino many times and grown many different species to see if they will fit that of an army against the Jedi. The year is 52 BBY, and Damask meets with Qui-Gon, Diaz, Dooku and Palpatine on Sereno. In a meeting discussing trade routes and agreements in the Outer Rim, Plagueis would never pass up the opportunity to talk with 4 powerful Jedi. They discuss a future conflict, Plagueis basically planting the seeds of doubt in them. He keeps a keen eye on Dooku and Palpatine especially, who briefly mention their concerns around the Jedi following the Senate and not the people of the Republic. He notes that they could be potential future allies or even apprentices. Plagueis' conversation with Diaz is specifically intriguing. It seems Diaz doesn't inherently share the opinions of Dooku and Palpatine and stands behind the Jedi and Senate through and through, regardless of their affiliation. It is here Plagueis has an epiphany and changes his plans. To destroy the Jedi, he must exploit their sense of self-righteousness and blind obedience to the Republic, making them appear to be the enemies of peace and order rather than the Guardians. To do this, he won't fight against the Jedi with the clone army, but create the army to fight alongside the Jedi, and he'll use Sifo Dyas to do this. 10 years later, as a result of Plagueis' experiments manipulating life with the Force fights back and births Anakin Skywalker. For the next 10 years, Plagueis continues developing the grand plan, creating unrest in the Outer Rim. Palpatine continues his studies in the Force, and in the meantime, Qui-Gon has taken an apprentice, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Palpatine has no such desires until a mission to Ryloth. Qui-Gon, Palpatine and Obi-Wan succeed in their mission and begin to head back to Coruscant until their ship breaks down and they're forced to land on Tatooine. They know it'll take days before the Republic can get to them, so decide to venture into town for parts. They stumble upon a trader, when the shop owner's slave, whose name is Anakin, greets them to help. Palpatine gets yet another vision, the same Mun from years ago, but now of the boy Anakin as well. This vision is less defined and inconclusive, but one thing is for certain, this boy will shape the galactic future. Qui-Gon also senses the Force in the boy. Their curiosity takes over, and they wonder whether the child's parents are Force sensitive. However, they travel to the Skywalker's house to find only a mother, who did not know how the child came about. Qui-Gon instantly thinks of the prophecy of the Chosen One, and brings this up with Palpatine, who, because of his vision, thinks he might be right. His exceptionally high midichlorian count only proves them right. They get permission from Anakin and his mother to take him back to Coruscant and devise a plan to free him from his master, which is successful. The Republic collects them on Tatooine and brings them back to Coruscant. In this story, Plagueis has no one cunning enough to implement his strategy of controlling the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. Zarek is by no means cunning enough. He's a strong apprentice, carrying out any tasks necessary, but he doesn't have any political ability. His abilities are more physical. But Plagueis still has influence over powerful members and the bureaucrats, including Mas Amida and other individuals, including Sate Pistage. He spent years in the shadows working with Ainley Team, the senator of Malastare. Under the illusion of a prosperous future for Malastare, Plagueis has pumped a lot of money into the system, which has bought Team's loyalty. Palpatine, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan take Anakin in front of the Jedi Council, who agreed for him to be tested. When they leave, they come into contact with Dooku and Diaz, whom they tell about Anakin. Palpatine whispers to Dooku about another vision of the Mun, and how this boy is the future of the Force. He is shocked, initially, but Dooku trusts Palpatine. Dooku knows a darkness is coming, and if Palpatine says this boy is necessary to stop it, he'll fight back for Anakin's right to be trained. Diaz, however, isn't so sure. He's a Jedi purist, and can't look past Anakin's age, but they'll do it without him. Chancellor Valorum's term is up. His 8 years in office was filled with failure and inactivity. A new election was to be held, and the main two candidates were Bail Organa and Ainley Team. Plagueis' control over the Senate was vast and wide. The Sith had spent 1,000 years undermining the Republic from the shadows, and now he would be able to test how strong their influence was. He has control over a big portion of the Senate and influences the vote in Ainley Team's favour, who ends up winning the election, becoming Chancellor. Team is the puppet, but Plagueis is in control. The night before the election, Plagueis has a conversation with Sifo Dyas, right after Plagueis used his powerful ability of Force Illusion to show Plagueis that a future conflict was imminent, and in order for the Republic to survive, they must do something about it. The Jedi was easily fooled, and Plagueis began to manipulate him. Plagueis, under the facade of Hugo Damask, tells Dyas the Republic has 15 years at most until war breaks out, and there's no hope. An army must be created now. Plagueis is good, a master manipulator, and convinces Dyas to order the clone army funded by Plagueis. Dooku, Palpatine, and Qui-Gon return to the council chambers after Anakin was tested, but the council came to the conclusion that he's too old to be trained. Dooku is not surprised by the decision, but nonetheless they are outraged. They've all sensed the rising darkness for a while now, and believe the Force has granted them this boy to help them, yet the council refuses. They stand together with Anakin in the council chambers, and declare that if the boy is not trained, Dooku, Palpatine, and Qui-Gon will leave the Order. They believe the training of Anakin supersedes their duty as Jedi, as Anakin may be the only hope the Republic has. They walk out without letting the council get a word in, but their stubbornness managed to convince the council to allow the boy to be trained. Dooku takes it upon himself to train the boy, but Palpatine is closely involved. Plagueis was successful in manipulating Dyas to his agenda. He places the order for the clone army under the facade of the Jedi Council. To cover their tracks, Plagueis has his apprentice, Zarek, kill Dyas and personally take over the cloning project. For the next 10 years, the clones would be growing and the Confederacy of Independent Systems would be set up. It's led by the head of the International Banking Clan, San Hill, whom Plagueis had groomed to his position. The Confederacy of Independent Systems includes serious influential powers in the galaxy, including the Trade Federation, Techno Union, Commerce Guilds, and Rothana Heavy Engineering. The clone army was ready, and Plagueis carefully manipulated the events so the Jedi and Republic would discover their army and the Clone War would begin. Dooku was surprised to hear his friend Sifo Dyas had ordered the creation of the clone army without confiding in him. But since Dyas shared their view that a war was imminent, he wasn't surprised. The Jedi spearheaded the clone army, and Plagueis has the Jedi right where he wants them. In this story, Anakin never met Padme, so his thoughts during training aren't clouded with her. He thinks of his mother from time to time, but less as his training went on. Anakin's been taught differently to the typical Jedi. Dooku, Qui-Gon, and Palpatine aren't so beholden to the rules like Anakin, making them very similar. They don't follow the normal Jedi ideals. They understand the importance of attachments and followed the will of the Force, not the will of the Jedi Council and Senate. They were similar to the Jedi of old and did what they believed to be right. They lived in the present and not the future like the Council. All-out war has broken out, and Plagueis hides in the shadows, controlling Ainley Team as well as San Hill. The war confused the Jedi. It stank of the dark side, and yet the Sith were extinct, or so they thought. Months into the war, Jedi Council is contacted by Rune Hako, lead member of the Trade Federation and Separatist Council. He proclaims he has important news regarding the war, but in return, they must be able to guarantee his safety. The council obliges, and Hako tells them the Separatists are being run by a Sith Lord who's been working with the Trade Federation in secret for over a decade. A majority of the deals were led by the International Banking Clan, specifically when Hugo Damask was chairman. This is interesting news to the Jedi. Suspicions that the Sith are alive and operating. Yoda asks why he's revealing this information to them. Hako replies telling the council he doesn't trust the Sith and believes once they are in power, they will take it for themselves and disregard the Trade Federation. This is key. In the original timeline, Dooku was cunning enough to be able to convince the Separatist Council of their movement. It required a strong figurehead, and San Hill definitely wasn't this, but Dooku was. The council thanks Hako for reaching out, and discuss what to do next. The obvious play is to confront Hugo Damask, and Dooku says he'll lead this. Together they gather Dooku, Qui-Gon, Palpatine, Mace Windu, Saisi Tin, and Shakti. On the way, Dooku discusses to Palpatine what was revealed to the council, and it clicks for him. He reminded Dooku of his vision all those years ago, of a Mun using the dark side. This could be Hugo Damask. A chill goes down Dooku's spine, but they continue regardless. They arrive in Damask's penthouse home on Coruscant and walk right in. Hugo is sitting at the desk in his living room and greets the Jedi. Dooku asks the Mun if they can ask him a few questions, and he obliges. Dooku looks deeply at Damask and tells it to him bluntly. He explains there are suspicions of him working alongside a Sith Lord to help the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Plagueis flatly declines and asks what proof the Jedi have, but Dooku says they only have suspicions for now, but have a court order to search his apartment for evidence. The Jedi begin searching and Plagueis stands up, complaining how this is outrageous and unlawful, but the Jedi continue regardless. Plagueis begins to worry. His plan was perfect. He can't think of how the Jedi have found him. He has Sith artifacts and lightsabers hidden all around his home. It's only a matter of time before one of them is found. Palpatine searches the top drawer of a cabinet in the office room and accidentally presses a button which transforms the cabinet into a weapons holder with lightsabers, whips, and staffs. Plagueis acts in an instant, almost at the speed of light. He kicks Palpatine into the closest wall, uses the Force to gather two sabers to run down the hall, and flips midair to decapitate Saisi Tin and Shaak Ti. Before Dooku and Mace could even respond, Plagueis was already out of the room. The Jedi now know the Sith have returned. For 1,000 generations, they have prepared and grew stronger. They now realize the true intention behind the war. It's Sith against Jedi once again. Now that Plagueis' identity is known to the galaxy, he openly becomes the leader of the separatist movement, and they double down on their war efforts. Zarek joins the fray, and they catch the Jedi by surprise. The war intensifies and ravage countless planets and claim the lives of millions, if not billions. The vast armies of the clones clashed with droid forces in relentless battles that left landscapes scarred and civilizations shattered. The brutality of the Clone War was evident in the ruthlessness of both sides. As entire cities were decimated, innocent lives were lost, and the horrors of war became a grim reality for countless beings caught in the crossfire. Plagueis himself kills many Jedi, and rumors of his powers in the Force echo throughout the Jedi Order. The war raged on for 4 long years and took its toll on all involved, breeding pain, suffering, and despair. Anakin, Dooku, Palpatine, and Qui-Gon have tried to hunt down Plagueis many times, but they've been unsuccessful. They sense the darkness continue to rise, and the Force is shifting in its favor. They know they're missing something, but they cannot figure out what. Anakin's power far exceeded what he was capable of in Revenge of the Sith. Under the tutelage of Dooku and Palpatine, at the age of 23, Anakin was arguably the strongest Jedi in the Order. Everyone was amazed by his powers in the Force, and whispers of the Chosen One prophecy echoed around the temple halls. Dissatisfaction with the Jedi was at an all-time high. Many worlds are becoming increasingly sick of the war and are questioning the Republic itself. A lot have considered joining the Separatists, and many become open to the idea. They were beginning to believe the Republic was too archaic, unable to actually change. This is what Plagueis wanted. His plan was complete, and the time had come. He'd played both sides of the war from the beginning, and had each piece where he wanted it. He brings his separatist fleet to the doorstep of the Republic, and they begin invading Coruscant. In the midst of battle, he and Zarek make their way towards the surface, and he orders Ainley team to issue orders to every clone commander around the galaxy. And Jedi begin to drop like flies. The clones march on the temple, led by Plagueis and Zarek. Plagueis has the Chosen One Anakin on his mind. He's the only unknown in his plan. He's heard his power has grown significantly, but is he strong enough for the Sith Master? Masters Plo Koon, Depa Billaba, and Agen Kola were caught off guard and shot down by the clones entering the temple. The battle is intense, and the Jedi are shot down every second, as the clones continue to storm in from every side. The Padawans and some knights don't stand a chance against the constant blast of fire from the clones, but the Masters put up a stronger defense. Plagueis himself is cutting down Jedi after Jedi. He might be the most powerful Sith Lord in history, bathing in the death of the light side, the cleansing of the Force. His power only increasing with each kill. He turns the corner to see Mace Windu, killing the clones, and they lock eyes. His focus immediately changes towards the Sith Lord. Plagueis has heard of Windu's rumored Vapor technique, and has been training to see whether he can be resistant to it, and this proves effective. They clash in an intense duel, but the Sith Lord comes out on top, severing the Jedi Master in half. Qui-Gon, Dooku, Palpatine, and Anakin remain together as they decimate the clones, a force to be reckoned with. They make their way to the Grand Hall to see Plagueis and Zarek fighting together, and they know what to do. The 4 of them rush the 2 Sith Lords, who prepare for them. Anakin and Dooku focus on Plagueis, and Palpatine and Qui-Gon focus on Zarek. If it was just the 6 of them there, then the Jedi would prevail. However, the clones were assisting the Sith, and it's difficult for the Jedi to block blaster fire whilst engaged in a fierce lightsaber duel. The fight is intense, and Plagueis implements every technique he knows: Force Wave, Force Bellow, and Force Illusion to try and crack the Jedi, but they stand strong. Halfway through the duel, the Separatist fleet enters the atmosphere and begin bombing the planet. The temple is hit and the roof of the Grand Hall collapses and falls down. Everyone is forced to disengage and hold the roof up with the Force. However, this was Plagueis' plan. He atomizes the ceiling, falling down on him to dust with the Force Wave, and darts towards Dooku, holding up the ceiling with the Force. Anakin watches Plagueis, who is only a blur, a spark of lightning to anyone watching as he makes his move. But the Chosen One acts quickly, just as fast. He spins to cut off both of Plagueis' arms as he's making the killing blow towards Dooku. The Sith Lord shrieks in shock as Anakin pulls him close with the Force and decapitates him. They look over towards the others, who had just disarmed Zarek and killed him on the spot. The Jedi were victorious. The bombing of the temple killed most of the clones, who were unable to protect themselves, whereas the Jedi could hold the ceiling above them. The Separatists continue their bombardment of Coruscant, and most of the planet is sacked until the Republic army from other areas of the galaxy return and eventually defeat them. But the damage has already been done. Yoda returns to Coruscant and, along with Dooku, quickly rush to the Senate to plead their innocence and beg for the clones to cease their attack on them. This is accepted, and the order is reversed. Most of Coruscant is heavily damaged, the heart of the Republic, and this will take time to repair. But they have won this war, and the Sith have been defeated once and for all. Yoda and Dooku were the only council members to survive the Purge, and Dooku, Qui-Gon and Palpatine and Anakin meet with Yoda to discuss the future of the Jedi Order. Dooku bluntly proclaims that the war was the Jedi's fault. They were arrogant and too involved in the Senate and its politics, and this pushed them away of the true purpose of the Jedi. The Jedi of old would be ashamed of what they've become. They got arrogant, self-righteous, which allowed the Sith to rise again. If it wasn't for the Chosen One, the Jedi would be extinct. The Force granted them a lifeline, and they must use this to revert back to their old ways of following the will of the Force instead of the will of the Senate. Yoda agrees and blames himself for what has happened. In his 800 years, the Jedi Order has changed a lot, but in the last years of his life, he will bring it back to what it should be. Qui-Gon, Palpatine and Anakin join the council together. With their collective wisdom, steer the Jedi Order in the right direction and begin following the will of the Force. Now the time you've all been waiting for. The winner of the giveaway is Darth Sand. If you could please link an email to your YouTube account so I can email you in the next 5 days, then you've won the lightsaber. Make sure to check out our other videos on the channel, and I'll see you all next time.